Next, we're going to have to discuss the LGBT legal rights, the Co-Deputy Director of Education, Advocacy, and Inclusion from Lambda Legal, Mr. Francisco. How do you pronounce your last name? I want to say it right. I want to get it right. I want to get it right. How do you pronounce your last name?
Duenas.
Duenas. Duenas. Okay, I wanted to get it right.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it. So I hadn't planned on being here tonight, so I have a few comments, but more than anything, I just wanted to make sure folks know who we were as a national organization, and then take any questions that folks might have. As Dave mentioned, I do think it's important to remember that we have been in really horrible administrations in the past. You know, this is not our first anti-LGBT presidential administration, obviously. And we have survived, and we have fought back, and we have thrived as well. And so I do think it's important to remember that, and as he said, we will collectively, we will, win. We will win. So Lambda Legal is a national LGBT legal defense organization. It's been around for over 40 years. We've been around since 1973. How many of you have heard of Lambda Legal before? Okay, great. We're the ones that sued the Boy Scouts. Most people know that. We overturned the sodomy laws in Texas and in 13 other states. I'm sure most people also enjoy that. And you know, we really think we're our community's lawyers. And so we want you to know that as well. We have a legal help desk. We get around over 6,000 calls a year of people that are facing discrimination or just have a legal question or a concern. That's all 50 states, including some of the territories. And we're going to be planning on expanding that. I wanted to just share with you all a little bit of our thoughts about how we are responding to this new administration, right? So one of our initiatives will be to help expand our help desk, so that more people are getting the information and the resources that hopefully will make a difference in their lives to whatever it is that legal question or concern they're facing. Second, obviously, we are going to sue the Trump administration a lot. I mean, that's just that's what we do, but then also, obviously, that's what they want us to do. And, you know, as Dave mentioned with the previous administration, I think you're seeing a lot of progressive civil, leaders as well prepare to fight this administration and its policies in courts, right? So one of the good things about the courts is that it's decentralized. The courts, we have lots of district courts, we have local courts, we have state courts. So it's not like there's only one Congress, there's only one president. So the courts are still an avenue for us to make our case and to have our day in court and to be heard and to hopefully slow down, or if not stop, whatever this administration is going to try and do against our community and the communities that we care about, right? So that's one of the things we're just preparing for. We're just going to be suing them a lot. The other thing we're looking to have some representation in Washington, D.C. for ourselves. As a national organization right now, we have 5 offices around the country. Our headquarters are in New York, but we also have offices in Atlanta, in Dallas, in Chicago, and here in LA. And I think that has helped us try and not be try to be decentralized as well. And we're expanding that to have some presence in Washington, D.C., and to be able to have a sense of what's going on there. And then the other thing is we're also in the courts currently fighting against the states that are passing bad anti-LGBT laws, like North Carolina's HB 2, Mississippi just passed the bill that David was talking about, the FADA, the First Amendment Defense Act. Yeah, I'm sorry. Mississippi passed one already. So this is not they have the same playbook. They're all playing from the same playbook, our opponents, conservatives. And like Dave was saying, there are going to be some themes that keep on coming up, right? And religious liberties, using religious liberties to discriminate is going to be one of the main themes that is going to keep coming up. And we are already suing in some places where that is happening. Mississippi is one of them. And we've been suing at different levels already on this theme a lot. I think after marriage equality, it was sort of the next evolution of their discrimination, right? And really, it's, in some ways, it's a segregation. It's like, fine, you want to get married, fine, but we don't have to interact with you in any ways, right? And religious liberties in the past have been used against civil rights, and they've been used on behalf of civil rights as well. Obviously, there's a tradition of religious support for increasing civil rights, especially on the racial justice community effort, right? And I just think as part of our work as well, in addition to, I'm in the education department, so in addition to the legal work that we're going to be doing, I do think as a community, we also need to continue educating ourselves and our friends and allies, right? So this religious liberty issue is one of them. We need to educate people and say the LGBT community is not against religious freedoms, that religious liberties and non-discriminating against people are not mutually exclusive. Like those two things should come together in the United States, under our Constitution, in the society we want to live in, and that we are for those rights, and we need to make sure, though, that those liberties are not used to discriminate and used against us, right? The other issue as well is, that we need to educate around a lot, I think, is our trans community. Like the North Carolina bill, HB2, targeting where trans people can live their life in public accommodations, it's called, but basically in public life. I think it's important, and we need to really educate folks about what that means, that really is trying to push trans people, limit their possibility in life, what they can do, how big a life, how big they can dream, and what they can do with their life. If they cannot have a job that allows them to go to the bathroom, right? Well, if they cannot go to a public building that has, they can't go to the bathroom at the public building, or do the locker rooms. There's so many different sex-segregated facilities in our communities, in our life, and to not have trans people be able to be a part of that is, what does that mean, right? And so I do think we need to further educate our own community about that, and then really educate our friends and allies about what that means. And then the last things we're going to be fighting as well are, and some of these are the things that Dave mentioned, we're really going to be fighting against the they're going to go after healthcare access, right? And so we're going to see what's possible, what we can do, and how we can sue them to stop those things. And if they come after marriage equality as well, we're going to be doing that. We put up a blog on our website, which was a little bit of a rundown of like, here are the things that we think are most vulnerable, here are the things that we think that are harder to undo, and here are the things that are not going to go away, right? So I would say please go on our website, please sign up for our emails as well. I passed around, for those that were here earlier, I passed around some of our newsletters, and we're just going to be preparing, like I said, to really take our message and our legal, take our message to the courts and use the courts to defend our community. We do some education work, and for the most part, we're going to be at the national stage. I think we're really gearing up for the Supreme Court nominee that, like Dave said, is probably going to be really horrible and is going to make a big impact in our lives going forward for many years. The Supreme Court, when they sit on there, they're for life. They get appointed for life. And so that really means, for many justices, 20, 25, 30-year runs. So that has the potential to really upend a lot of the progress in the long run that we've made. at least at that level and stuff. Folks have any questions that I can answer? No? Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're going to want you to repeat the question so
I'm
everybody
sorry, we should have
hears
did
it.
this earlier because I feel that Lambda Legal, the work that you do is very important and intricate over the next 4 years. And so I really want to make sure that we hear the questions that are being said. So who had the question first?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think everybody heard me. I have a big voice. Anyway, I'd like to know what Lambda Legal is doing for post-incarceration for LGBTQ, especially people of color, and then also inside the jail system. I know Los Angeles has a pretty good system, let's say. However, but there's a lot of disparities in post-incarceration, so I'd like to know if there's any opportunities or what could we do,
Yeah, I think this is another place where I would say I think somebody mentioned about what the possibility is for policy in West Hollywood. I do think we're going to have to continue doing what we need to focus on. So criminal justice reform is one of those issues that maybe at the national level is not going to go, a lot going to go forward. But that doesn't mean at the state level and at the local level we cannot do more on that. We did put out we did a study in 2010. A couple of years ago. It was 2015.
I saw there was a big.
It's I think the only right now. It's the only study that looks at the experience of LGBT people in prisons, with police misconduct, in courts, and with school security and school personnel, right? And so I do think some of it, for a lot of these issues with the LGBT community, there's just not a lot of research out there. And so in terms of trying to figure out the policies, I do think more studies are needed and more capturing of stories. So that's why I would also let people know if they are facing anything in any particular program that they're facing, please give us a call. We have brought lawsuits on behalf of LGBT people in drug rehab programs, foster care systems, all sorts of different ways that LGBT people are discriminated. That doesn't always get at the disparities you're talking about because sometimes they're systemic, right? Sometimes it's just like lack of resources, lack of funding for the support that we need. But we're hoping that we can still continue some of the good work in some of the states that there is still an opportunity to bring forward good policy. So for example, here in California, there's an opportunity to reform the criminal justice, the criminal laws around HIV, which I don't know how many of you know, but California has a law that says, if you are living with HIV and you intend to pass along HIV, it singles HIV out specifically, right? That's against the law. That's a crime. It also includes a provision for people it's called solicitation, people that are sex workers, basically. And so this law is mostly used against sex workers. And we think that there's an opportunity to move forward some of that work and could create good policy and then hopefully use as models in other states. So I do think we're going to need to keep on doing some of that. And the criminal justice is one of those areas that I do think we're going to need to keep focusing on and coming up with some solutions in our communities that hopefully then we can eventually come back to the national level once this administration is gone. Thank you for your question. Any other questions? Question here and yeah, I think so. They come in with the mic for you.
I feel like Ivan. I feel like I got a big enough voice, but okay. I recently saw, it was either ABC News or NBC News, it was a news capsule that basically showed a lesbian couple who had a child, and because of your new president, they were already taking legal steps to try to, A, protect the child, and B, protect the union. But I didn't understand what those measures are. So for the benefit of anyone in here who might be married, could you tell us legally if there are any measures that could be taken now, just in case, to protect those unions?
Absolutely. What's your name? I'm sorry.
Clarence
Clarence.
Williams.
Thank you, Clarence, for the question. If people go to our website, we do have different Know Your Rights web hubs, right? So we're going through issue per issue so that folks know what their rights are. We actually have on there a site for, it's called Life and Financial Planning, right? And I do think for those people that are married and have children especially, and for both of those things, there are steps that people can take to protect themselves. So there are a host of rights and obviously responsibilities. Know this when you're married and you have a child. We do recommend people to, especially if they're going to be traveling to a state that we know might not recognize their rights, might not go to another, travel to another country. One of those added protections that people can take are second parent adoptions, which I think are available in some places. Some places there's called step parent adoptions. There are different legal, processes that people can take that are just basically added protections for them. The marriage should be enough in most of the places that, it should be enough, period, right? And our rights should be respected. And at the same time, we want to make sure that for those people that want to seek the utmost level of safety and protection as possible, it can't hurt to get additional legal protection through some of those processes. So that's an example of what is possible and what people can do in addition to obviously just getting married. For folks that are like I said, married, they can also make sure to have a will, be protected. All those legal paperworks like advanced health directives, all that stuff. We all need it no matter what. And I would say, as an LGBT person, unfortunately, sometimes you need it more than other people. That's just, So if you go to our website, if you click on the Know Your Rights, there's a section in there about life and financial planning, and there's just different things folks should know about that and your rights there. We also, we also have your rights if you're living with HIV, rights if you're a youth, rights if you're a transgender person, and rights in courts. If you're going to a court, what are your rights?
And what's the website?
It's lambdalegal.org, and just go to Know Your Rights. Any final questions? I'm going to be here, so folks want to come up to me afterwards as well. Yeah.
Can you talk about what Texas is trying to do to narrow the scope of the marriage ruling?
Okay. I'm sorry, your name? Brian? So the good thing about the courts, like I said, is that they're very decentralized. The bad thing as well is that there's very decentralized in the sense that there's lots of them, right? So some some judges are able to bring forward their legal arguments that are anti-LGBT. So I think in particular, I don't know how much of a concerted effort, but we are afraid that this legal argument might get picked up and replicated in different places. But basically, one judge in Texas said, the Supreme Court case, Obergefell, which gave us the right to marriage equality, that said marriage was a fundamental right for same-sex couples, that did not apply to all the states. I'm trying to recall specifically, and I don't know, Brian, if you remember. They're basically just saying that it did not apply as broadly going forward in all the ways that married couples should be respected, basically. So some of the things that Clarence was talking about, like presumption of parentage, if you have a child in a marriage, it's presumed to be the parent of both of the people in the marriage when the child is born. You know, I think they're trying to limit those rights and responsibilities for marriage. And I do think that we are afraid some of those legal arguments might get replicated in other courts or other conservative courts, other judges that want to use the same logic about just trying to limit the scope of that Supreme Court decision, you know. And obviously we're going to be making the case that no, that that the ruling was broad and protected us, you know. Yeah, and that's not as clear as an example as I'd like to give you, but it's basically they're trying to limit, you know, how it can be applied, you know. All right. Any other questions? Okay, folks. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Robert. Please look us up.
Thank
Like I said, I'll be here, lambdalegal.org.
Make sure you all go to Lambda Legal website to understand your legal rights. They're going to be very important over the next 4 years. And, you know, I always joke around, honey. You look at me wrong, I'm going to call Lambda Legal, honey.